I started when I was 11. I started with the classical guitar, almost similar to this one. Then I added pickups, and I put 3 pickups on myself. And I plugged it into my father's radio, which is 2 watts amplifier. So that was my first encounter to the electric guitar. I didn't practice that much. When I first got the guitar, when I was 11 years old, I never used to practice very much. And every time I went to guitar lessons, the guitar teacher said that you haven't been practicing. So that was a problem for about 6 months. Then afterwards, I started to practice more when he kind of found out that I wasn't practicing. I kind of felt guilty. So until I started practicing, he wasn't going to teach me anymore. So there was one time I went to a music lesson, and I hadn't practiced at all. I was reading music, and he stopped me and he says, "Have you practiced this week?" And I said, "No." I said, "Well, go home and practice." He wouldn't teach me anymore until I practiced. I did a lot of session work from the age of 16 to 19, 18. And I knew this one producer called Joe Meek. I used to do all his records. He wrote Telstar. I don't know if you know Telstar. It was a #1 instrumental in the world. And it was quite funny because I do about 4 sessions a day. So for a 17-year-old, I was making a lot of money from studio work. It's a good way of, it's good to have that discipline in the studio. And I met a lot of people when I was doing those recordings. People like Tom Jones, people like that. And but then I stopped around about 19 and went on the road with the band, The Outlaws. And that's what brought me up to 19 years. Yes, that's right, not a wild rock and roll life, but we used to have this habit of, whenever we went to a concert, on the way we used to buy flour bags, split them open and throw these flour bags at people and then run away. But unfortunately we used to have on our van, it used to say The Outlaws, and it used to say call this number. So the police would always call that number and say you've been throwing flour bags at people. So every time we would have a session in the studio, the producer at the end of the session would say, "There's a policeman here again to see you lot." Every time we did a session, there's always a policeman. Because we like to play practical jokes. We had catapults, gooseberries, I don't know if you know what they are, and the flour bags. So we got into a lot of trouble in those days. No, it was Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis asked me to join a band that he was putting together. So I flew over from Hamburg to London, and they had John Lord in the band, and that's when we met each other. And from there, we just, John and I put the band together. We got other members in, and then we had to kick Chris Curtis out because he was a little bit strange. That's another story. We both liked Vanilla Fudge, that band. We both liked Mountain. They were very good. And we had a little bit of Hendrix in there. And John was interested in playing with orchestras, which I didn't mind, which we did. I think we did 2 LPs. But then I said I didn't want to play with any more orchestras. I wanted to keep it rock and roll. That's when we put out Deep Purple and Rock. And I said, at the time, I said, if this doesn't make it, then we should maybe play with orchestras. But if it does, we should pursue the rock and roll. Playing with orchestras is kind of difficult sometimes because of the balance. The guitars are so loud. Violins are so quiet. Plus, a lot of classical players have they're kind of a little bit, they're snobs in a way. Sometimes they don't like to play with rock and rollers, and they were kind of a little bit strange in that era. So the whole thing to me reeked of a novelty. It was a hype. It was a gimmick, of which I didn't want to do again. Yes, Ian's kind of a hard person to play with sometimes. He's like me. He's very he can be very upfront, and so we were like 2 bears, and I didn't particularly like his way of life, and he didn't particularly like mine. So after about 1972, he would always lose his voice. I didn't think that was too professional, so I had a problem with that. And with Roger, I don't think Roger really likes rock and roll anyway. But you'd have to ask them, I suppose, why they started drifting away. I had no idea. Yes, I remember Ian Pace saying to me, I have this singer, he had a tape of David Coverdale. And I listened to it and I thought he was very good, so we auditioned him. And then he changed him a bit. I remember David Coverdale coming for the audition. He was quite a big guy then, with a big beard, glasses. And I thought maybe he's not a rock and roll, so we have to change him. So he took his glasses off and shaved his beard and put him on a diet. We had lots of political problems backstage, but when I did the show, I thought I wanted to do something extra special. So I said, I know what I'll do. I'll blow up the amplifier. It'll look good on television. And I told the roadie to put petrol over the amplifier and then just to light it. I didn't tell the rest of the band. They didn't know what's going on. So he poured all the petrol over the amplifier, too much petrol. And then he lit it. And when it blew up, it went up so great that it knocked off Ian Pace's glasses, came off. And somebody was deafened for a day, and a few people fell down. It was like a little bomb had gone off. We wanted it to go up, but not that much. And it went off too much because they put too much petrol on. And with that, the police were trying to find me, to arrest me. But afterwards, I jumped into a helicopter and we got away.